Hey everyone, Leif with Substrate Climbing Performance here, and I wanted to shoot this video to talk to you about deadlifting. Now, deadlifting is arguably one of the single best exercises that we can do as human beings and as athletes, whether we're 17 or 70. The deadlift focuses on the hinging movement pattern, which is one of the four major movement patterns we want to concentrate on when we are strength training, and it largely targets the posterior chain. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what the posterior chain is, posterior of course means backside, and it's referring to the chain of muscles effectively starting in your lats, working down into your glutes and into your hamstrings. Now, our posterior chain makes up a large portion of what we consider our core, and it's where we derive a lot of our body tension from when we're on the wall, especially on steep terrain. So strengthening the posterior chain has great carryover to climbing and on the wall movement. Now, a lot of people are hesitant to deadlift because they've heard of someone who's hurt their back, or maybe because they don't have the heavy equipment and the weights needed to properly deadlift. When done correctly, the deadlift is a very safe exercise. It's only when the form is bad that it can be very dangerous. And I'm going to be using the Pitch 6 force board today to show you an isometric deadlift so that if you don't have a lot of heavy equipment, you can do this lift at home in your climbing training. But first, I want to cover the difference between squatting and deadlifting because they look similar, but they are quite a bit different. I have a highly anatomical drawing over here showing the difference between the major movement patterns, hinge and squat. When we are squatting, our center of gravity is effectively coming straight up and down, and our hips move ever so slightly backwards while our knees bend. So if I'm going to do a squat movement pattern, I'm not going to lean forward. I just want to come straight down and straight back up. Straight down and straight back up. Head and shoulders are basically staying centered over my feet the entire time. When we are hinging, like we do in a deadlift or something like a kettlebell swing, initiating the movement from the top down, our hips actually shift backwards, and there's only a slight bend in the knees at the bottom. So instead of coming straight down like I am in a squat, I'm going to shift my hips backwards, then a slight bend, then back up. Hips backwards, slight bend, then back up. Versus coming straight down, hips backwards. That's the major difference between a squat pattern and a hinging pattern. Now, something to consider when we are deadlifting is the alignment of our spine. And one of the biggest mistakes that we see in people hurting their low backs when deadlifting is the tendency to take any sort of load and round the spine. You can see how rounded my spine is right now. And a lot of times between rounding the spine and simply bending over, a lot of folks, when they haven't had proper instruction, they think that a deadlift is simply just bending over and picking the weight up. Okay, that's incorrect, that's wrong. That's how people hurt their back. So the cue that I always give my athletes is, think about a dog who is in trouble. When the dog is in trouble, he's going to tuck his tail, okay? That is essentially shifting the pelvis forward and tilting the pelvis forward. That's the bad position. We don't want to be in that. Instead, you want to be a happy dog with our tail out. So what that does is that tilts the pelvis forward, and it keeps a nice neutral spine when I'm loaded versus rounding out the spine like this. This is bad, this is good, okay? As long as you maintain that neutral spine while you are deadlifting, you're not going to hurt your low back. It is only when we lose this form to this that our lumbar spine becomes endangered. So let me show you a quick tutorial of the deadlift. I have my force board set up here with my curl bar. I've got this set up about hands just above knees. That's going to be the good position for this, for an isometric deadlift. Again, I'm going to kind of get into position. There's a slight bend in my knees. Hips are back, not over my feet like they are in a squat position, but they're back a little ways. Arms are straight. And then again, I'm really going to concentrate on thinking I'm a happy dog. I've got my spine in that neutral position, and instead of thinking about pulling on the bar like I would with something like a yielding isometric pull, This is all about pressing the floor away with my legs. All of the movement and all of the power should come from my glutes and my hamstrings with this. So I'm gonna be in this position, and then I'm only gonna pull for about 3 to 5 seconds. So, and done. One more. Again, with the deadlift, really important to think about neutral spine position here, not rounding forward. Shoulders should just be seated, coming down and back up. If you have any questions about the deadlift or the squat pattern, please message me. I always love talking to you about this. Incorporate the deadlift into your training. If you haven't yet, it is well worth getting to know. It is a wonderful, wonderful exercise that